Hi, everyone. Welcome to the series Stories of Resilience, and we are entering a new chapter with Jason. So can you please introduce yourself and tell those of us who don't know or follow you on social media what you're all about?
Okay, thanks, Dr. D. So happy to be here with you. Definitely honored to talk about resiliency. I'm Jason Phillips. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and life coach. So if you don't follow me on social media, my handle is J Phillips MSW. That's the same for Facebook. And if you're interested in coaching, my website is pmpcoach.com for peace and prosperity.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it stood for. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, yes, and definitely give him a follow. He puts out a lot of good content. He consistently goes live. And yeah, it's a lot of good information he shares. So thank you for taking time out and being here today.
Yeah.
So to just jump and get started, how would you define resilience in your own words?
Ooh, tough question. I would say for me, resiliency is not giving up. It's kind of staying in the fight because, we all go through stuff. We have ups and downs, and it's really easy to quit, especially when it gets rough. That's when we like, okay, I'm about to break. So resiliency is kind of, I think, holding yourself accountable, making a promise to
Oh,
yourself, and keeping that promise
oh,
despite when things kind of interfere and get tough.
yes. I like that piece. I haven't heard that accountable and the keep and promise part before, but I think that is so key because we could just keep on going and press and never give up. But if we're not married to the purpose why we're doing it and that like deeper value that you're touching on when you say the keeping the promise to yourself, then you could kind of get lost in it all.
Yeah, and then one broken promise after another broken promise. Next thing you know, you're like, wow, how did I get here? But it's like one small
Right.
decision after another.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good. So how would you say, when did you notice how resilient you actually were?
Two ways I noticed. One, a coworker, he pointed out about 5, 6 years ago, because at the time I was working 3 jobs, which was a lot. And he kind of pulled me to the side to check in with me, like, hey man, you doing all right? And he said you probably have a high thresh threshold for high intense situations and
Mhm.
crisis
Mhm.
intervention. But he said make sure you take care of yourself. And when he said
Yeah.
that, I respected him first, so I really listened. But then it
Mhm.
gave me a chance to like, okay, let me look and see what all I got going on. I was
Mhm.
working at a community mental health center. I was working as a grief counselor, and I had a small contract gig at a local college.
Oh
So
gosh.
but I did enjoy it though, even though it sounds like it was a lot. I was working
Uh-huh.
for my former school, so that was really nice to, talk to students. Um, I love grief counseling, but I was like, okay, I am pretty resilient, but I also want to make sure I take inventory of what I got going on.
Yeah. Yeah, because you being aware of how you are spending or storing up your resources is going to allow you to be even more resilient, or it could lead to that like burnout phase, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And were you doing all of that like and had a family life too? Or was it just
I
you
mean,
at the
yeah.
time?
No, I was married or engaged. I
Okay.
can't. I think I was engaged. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that,
So
that puts a strain on things too.
yeah. So, and then the second piece, my mother passed about a month and a half ago.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
I was still taking time away, of course, to take care of her. I was still going to work when I could and promoting my business. So it kind of, again, it was like, okay, I want to stay committed, but I also have to rebalance some things.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a theme in both of the things that you shared, like you noticing you were resilient. It's like, yeah, I know I could fight, I know I could stand. It's about like me also making sure I know how to balance myself too, or how to like reallocate my resources.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that one, I want to dive deeper into that one later in our conversation because that's something that so many of us need help with and
Yeah.
figuring out how do I actually do that. Okay. The next question I was curious about was where was it that you even saw examples of resilience?
I think my parents or my mother and grandmother and grandfather, like seeing them just with their work ethic, going to work every day, not calling in, staying committed to raising myself and my younger sister. Because it's tough, I don't have kids, but I know it's tough raising kids and still keeping up with your career and
Mhm.
family. So, just that example alone was good to see, like, okay, you can do it. Just don't give up.
Okay. Okay. So your parents showed you the importance of like commitment and yeah, that follow through, what you were talking about earlier, the keeping the promise to yourself and to the people that you provide for.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've seen it in other people too. I'm not as big, but I used to be a big basketball fan. So Allen Iverson was a huge role model for me. And if anybody's a fan, they know he just has like that no quit attitude. So
Mm-hmm.
that was inspiring to see somebody so small put so much out there on the basketball floor, no matter what.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
That's good. So you didn't only use the people that you knew like in your daily life as a source of inspiration and a way to model, but you also looked outside and were able to use like
yeah,
sports figures and celebrities and things like that to inform like, okay, I can resonate with that and that's something that I want to adapt for myself.
yeah.
Okay.
Always kind of having that mindset, like, okay, if they can do it, how come I can't? Like, we know
Okay.
we're all human.
Okay. Right. And that's a good way to look at it because a lot of times people might look at it the other way, right? Like they'll be intimidated or they'll be like, oh, it's something special about them because they could do that. I could never do that. But you flip that on its head. You're like, because we are all human, the
Yeah,
fact that this person could do it, it means that I could do that too. And so that kind of
exactly.
inspires you and to strive towards it.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that one. The human piece. Okay. So this is where I want the meat of our conversation to be, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, but over time,
Hmm.
how is it that you have strengthened and cultivated your own resilience?
Hmm. Another tough question. I would say over time, just really setting, like, we talk about motivation, discipline, consistency, but really for myself, having a standard and then sticking to that standard.
Okay. Can you
So,
elaborate on that a little bit?
yeah, definitely. So, like, I talked about my mother passing about a month and a half ago. When she was ill, I had a couple of podcasts such as this lined up already.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, I could have kind of said, hey, I can't do it, can't make it. And, it would have been fully acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to still kind of keep myself accountable. But I also knew that helping, like doing things like this, would give me a chance to breathe and stay resilient so I could go back and take care of her.
Oh,
So
okay.
even though it may seem like, okay, how am I prioritizing things? But I'm doing things to keep myself energized. So when heavy stuff comes up, I still got energy in the tank to still go.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I wanna touch on a couple real powerful things you mentioned right there because I hear a huge distinction between what you just described and what a lot of people might use work as a way to numb stuff, right? Like they might become workaholics or they'll just work extra hours where there's stuff going on at home because that's a way of escaping, right? It's another way of
Right.
escapism. However, there's something like very unique about what you shared is that when you are doing work that you feel called to do, like when you're working and walking in your purpose, when you do your work, you feel refreshed. You sometimes, not all the times, because there's
Yeah.
things, there's things that's just like, but when you're doing work that is congruent with your values and with your principles, a lot of times you doing your work, you feel a heightened sense of purpose. You have a little bit more energy. You, like you said, you're able to breathe through that. So you actually keeping and maintaining that work schedule on the side kind of allowed you to to breathe and exist in that other role that you have as a professional. So then when you went back to mom as a son, through this very difficult period where it's just not any son, but, you know, it's a son that is aware of the reality that, you know, we're going to have to be saying, see you later soon, then that gave you the strength and the resources you needed to be able to be the son you wanted to be at that time.
That's exactly right. Yep.
That's a huge distinction. I think it's important to make. There's a difference between just escaping something and then intentionally doing something so you build up the resources you need to do what you also feel called to do and step up in that way. And there was another thing that you mentioned. Oh, you tied in the balance piece. I heard you kind of hint about that a little bit when you shared that. So can you elaborate on how you even balance things?
I think, you know, being resilient is tough. So you have to make sure you balance the stuff that you like, that I enjoy, as opposed to all the things that we have to get done.
Oh, say that again.
I mean, it's a difference. You know, we got things that we enjoy and then things that we have to get done.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, like, again, taking time out to do this, talk and podcast with you, I enjoy it. It's refreshing. You know, it's not something that I'm like, oh, I got to do this. I got to pay a bill or I got to call it, you know. No, I enjoy this. So having that healthy balance, knowing that I'm pretty intentional about choosing the way I spend my time.
Right.
Because it'll get away from us and we'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm swamped.
Right.
And
Okay,
you
that
can't
was
be resilient then.
Right, because then you're just in crisis mode trying to keep the boat afloat versus, and the powerful word you used was being intentional. Like, you premeditate the things that you do. It's not just like, you know, like a list of things like I got to check off. Like, the things that I put on my plate, I put them there for a reason. And the reason it's often it serves at multiple levels. Like, it helps me professionally, but it's also something that I might enjoy. And it's also something that energizes me. And it's also something that, you know, gives me a sense of purpose and confidence and all of those other things. And so when you are intentional about setting your life up in that way, setting up your appointments in that way, your schedule in that way, then you are more able to balance things because there's more integration in the things you have to balance.
Right. Yep.
That's
so,
good.
You know, prime example, you like, hey, what time you want to do this? You know, early is better for me because I want to do stuff that I want to do early. I don't want to get to like 6, 7 o'clock and I'm like, oh, I didn't do nothing for myself. Let me do this. And something could happen. Anything can, you know, somebody can get sick. You got to do an errand. Be like, oh man. So get it out the way early. The stuff that you enjoy.
That's good. Yeah. Because the stuff's going to come up. The phone's going to ring. You're going to get that text. Stuff's going to come up. So you intentionally have like that time in the end of the day where you can handle those things. But in the beginning of the day, like I'm working on my vision, my purpose, the things that kind of spark that passion or joy within me. Okay, that's good. So being intentional, making sure you're aware of the things that you could do that energize you. Like, it sounds like that's part of your regular process, was like, is something that's going to drain me, or is this something that's going to fill me up? So that's like another thing it sounds like you do to enhance your resilience. And then that's part of your process of balancing. Is there anything else that helps you notice when things are unbalanced and what you can do to, you know, put the scale where it need to be?
If I'm getting pretty irritable, like if I'm just like grumpy, if I'm dreading a client, even though I love, you know, being a coach, being a therapist, if I'm like, man, then I'm like, okay, what's going on? Do I need a break? Do I need to slow this down? Do I need to enhance this? Am I not going to the movies enough? Am I not watching TV? You know, what's up? And sometimes it's just a conversation with a friend to kind of get me back on track.
Right.
Or a coach myself, you know, as therapists, we got to have a therapist too.
Right. So I love how you brought in that like emotional intelligence piece too, because you're like, okay, if those unwanted emotions are coming up, like, oh, I'm starting to dread something, or oh, I'm feeling irritable, this isn't where I like to operate from.
Mhm.
Instead of doing what we were talking about earlier, just trying to like numb it away or avoid it, you sit with it and you're like, okay, what is it that I need? This is telling me something. What is it telling me? And then you make decisions and act based off of that. So you deal with as soon as you feel that sensation in the moment.
I try to. I mean, I'm not perfect, by no means, but I try to, because when I avoid stuff, then it's always in the back of my mind. Like, it don't matter what it is. If I avoid it, I'm putting it off. I'm like, okay, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. So the
Mm-hmm.
things that are tough and difficult, I try if I can to knock it out early.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
and that helps me be resilient when I'm trying to be a husband, when I'm trying to be a dog owner, when I'm managing my team,
Mm-hmm.
um, teaching students, whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you were talking earlier about like earlier in the day, you have more energy too. So that's more of like, your awareness of integrating, like, if I know for a fact it's important for me to deal with it, because avoiding it hasn't ever served me well. So I
Yeah.
know I want to deal with it, and it'll be best for me to deal with it earlier on when I have the resources available to be able to do it. Because
Right.
if I wait till the end of the day, or if I push it till later, then things tend to compound or become more difficult to manage.
Yeah, and that was learning by experience, being younger, teenage years, early adulthood, where I would put stuff off, and then I forget something. My
Mm,
memory gets all clouded. I'm like, oh, why did I forget that? And it's something simple too. Then I
yeah,
hated that. I hated that.
yeah. And so you just flipped it on its head and was just like, okay, I'm gonna do those things first.
hmm One thing, we talked about my mother dying. One thing she told me when I was younger, like, if it takes, don't put it off to tomorrow what you can do today.
Mm,
And then my rule
yeah,
is, if it takes less than 5 minutes, do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. And then a lot of times we could just break up those big things that get us overwhelmed into those smaller tasks, like you said, and be like, okay, if it's something I could do in 5 minutes. And then once we get started, like the motivation ends up hitting us anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, breaking things down into like 5-minute tasks is a really effective way of being able to be more productive.
hmm
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to mention that I appreciate hearing, and when you're sharing about your mother, is like a lot of the times, and this like through your grief work, when we um are dealing with the loss of someone, sometimes it's like even too difficult to have the memory or to speak about
Yeah.
them. And I love how you are being a beautiful example of, there is like, she's still here with me and her spirit is still part of who I am. And like you have still integrated like her existence into your
Yeah.
own. And like that's one way that so many people are able to heal and deal with it. Because it's like, yes, physically she's gone, but
hmm
like the lessons she's taught me, the value she's instilled in me, the self-talk that's not, I've adopted as my own, like that's something that I get to keep. And then you embrace that fully. And so it's a beautiful example of how it is that we can lose someone and still remember them with gratitude, with appreciation, with joy, and it not having to be a only heartbreaking experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you. I like the way you put that.
I'm
Yeah.
glad. I'm glad. I haven't yet gone through a very, very close loss, but I know it's part of the, life experience. So
Yeah.
like I know one day it will come. And I like, I observe people. So I appreciate you like being that example, because that's one way that we can model to others. Like, it's going to be hard and you're going to be heartbroken, but there is a way to continue.
Oh
And
yeah.
you're showing how, in a very healthy and way that's actually like uplifting her. So I appreciate
All right.
that.
Thank you.
Beautiful example. Is there anything that we missed that you have included in your cultivating resilience toolkit?
Um, I mean, I do definitely give myself a little bit of break, so I know we can be hard on ourselves. I can be hard on myself. and I have good support. It's not always me, but I have good friends and family who will say, okay, Jay, take a break, slow it down. You got a lot going on. And they'll kind of reassure me and kind of like, okay. And then I can look at myself and say, okay, well, I have done quite a bit. I can take a day off. I can go to the movies.
Right.
I think over time that helps with resiliency. And looking at
Absolutely.
like, people always I think that resiliency has to be like super tough, loud, dominating, but you can be a silent leader. And when you do that, people can kind of like, it's easier for people to follow you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You don't have to
because
be like super loud.
yeah, yeah. And it's so much more relatable too, because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like I see what you're doing. And even just what the example, we just finished talking about, like, you don't have to be out there like giving the big, huge motivational speaker, speeches about that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
Yeah.
like that's a perfect example of how we can apply these kind of things in day-to-day life
Mhm.
versus it having to be some kind of grand act.
Yeah.
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 Okay. And then the break, because yeah, rest and recovery is essential in the physical, like muscle building and strength. And I know that's,
Yeah.
physical activity is a big part of what
Yeah.
you do too. And it's just as important for our psychological and emotional well-being to like take those breaks and give ourselves the permission to do that. Because in the
Right.
business culture, there's just the no days off and hustle
Yeah.
hard and da 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 da. So how have you reconciled those, like,
Mm,
that message that you get a lot? And I feel like men are, because of their expected role as providers, like they are hammered with that message a little bit more than we as women are. Like, I'm encouraged to go get my nails done and, like have my quote
yeah.
unquote, like, spa days or whatever. But like as a man, I've noticed that there's a lot more messaging like, oh, you just got to work hard, no days off, da 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 da. So how do you reconcile that and understanding and knowing the importance of being able to take that rest?
I mean, I've struggled with it before, but at the end, when I do something like I got a massage scheduled for Monday. So, when I do stuff like that and I leave the place, I feel like, oh God, I'm feeling way better, super
Mm-hmm.
light. And so
Mm-hmm.
by actioning on it before I actually believe it, like I might kind of feel like, oh, I don't
Ah.
really have time to see a therapist or I don't have time to go to the gym. But then just going through it anyway. And then afterwards, kind of give myself like, okay, that was cool. I needed that.
Yeah. I like that. It reminds me of that quote. It's not the same, but it reminds me of the quote, like, feel fear and do it anyways. So you're just like,
Oh yeah.
feel that skepticism, but still do it anyways. Like, make the decision based off of your experience of it. Like, make the decision for yourself versus beforehand just being like, nah, I can't.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
again, it kind of goes back to avoidance. It's hard to be resilient when you
Hmm.
avoid a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the more we can do stuff, even if it's uncomfortable for us, then we give ourselves a little bit more confidence. We can do it again and again.
Yes.
And even if you don't still like it, if it's still uncomfortable, at least you can say I did it.
Hmm. I
Like
tried it.
I
Hmm.
tried it. I tried it. You give
Right.
yourself that credit.
Right. Right. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. So, why would you say it's important to develop resilience?
I mean, bluntly, I think if you don't, you'll fail at a lot of stuff. You'll fail at a lot of things. And then, you can fall into depression. You just won't feel good about yourself if you can't develop some really good habits and set a good standard for yourself. Even, we get sick, we get tired, we get overwhelmed, but at least what standard you're setting for yourself and what you got to go back to. So
Yeah.
if you don't develop that type of resiliency at a young age, life is going to be really tough. I can remember vividly when I was like, I don't know, between 8 and 11, something like that. I was playing a
Mhm.
video game with my uncle. And of course,
Mhm.
him being older, I think he beat me and I wanted to quit. And he was like,
Mhm.
nah, we're not going that route. Then on the flip side, when I started beating him so bad, I felt bad. So I was going easy on him. And he was like, no, don't go easy on me.
Oh.
So then that let me know, okay, people don't want you to just give them a pass. to like pacify them, quote unquote. But you
Mm-hmm.
have to like do you. If you're better than somebody or something, that's fine. Help them get better. But don't
Mm-hmm.
try to like downplay what you can do and what you bring to the table just because you don't want to overshadow or step on somebody else's ego.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so good. And you're highlighting something else, like the importance of play, right?
Right.
Because whether we're parents, whether we're teachers, whether we're auntie and uncle, like
Yep.
the play experience, like that's something that you decades later are remembering vividly. Like that was a life lesson that you had, and just, maybe it was a
Yeah.
Saturday morning, just video
Yep.
game session, but like play is how we connect to children, and they really do remember that. And what we teach our children through our play are how they develop these life lessons. And that's something
Yeah.
that you just illustrated so perfectly. Like that was where that idea of resilience and practicing, that integrity and not giving up, but also not shrinking yourself or making yourself smaller for somebody else's comfort. Like those are life lessons that you learned off of playing video games with
Yeah, I'm
Uncle,
playing. Yeah, like they didn't have
Yeah.
to play. It was like NBA Chicago versus Lakers. That type of game.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
on
that's
the
a
station.
that's a good like life nugget right there. Like don't underestimate, just the casual play with our children, because we become adults and we remember that stuff.
Yeah, so, and you can't just let kids win. I mean, you don't want to beat them down bad, but you just don't want to let them win, because then they'll think that they're so great and they won't know how to handle when somebody at school beats them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
You know,
it's about like being able to be there to teach progression as well, right? Because like
right?
that's part of what built your confidence. You're like, there was a time I couldn't beat him, but then
Oh
there
yeah,
was a time, oh, I got you. I'm actually going easy on you.
yeah,
Yeah, and that builds confidence too, seeing growth, because that's what it's about, versus from day one just thinking you're like the miracle
right.
kid type.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, so I got it will so if you don't cultivate the resilience, then you're going to experience a lot of failure, which we all do. However, the difference is you're not going to be able to know how to recover from that failure if you don't have that resilience, instilled or developed. It's going to increase the likelihood of depression. You're going to struggle with some low self-worth, self-confidence type of
yeah,
issues, and then there's going to be a loss of clarity on what your standards are.
right. And some things that we like want to do, we aren't always good at off the rip. So then you won't have that resiliency to go and practice it and step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So then you'll be stuck doing something maybe that you're good at, but it's not necessarily what you want to do.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just learning how to be in those spaces where like I'm growing, and you're looking at it from that perspective versus looking at it how you were saying earlier, like, oh, I'm a failure, and then kind of internalizing that failure as
Yeah.
something that is wrong with you or a flaw of yours.
Yep.
Okay. Who would you hope that your story of resilience touches?
Any type of, I mean, I don't know the audience, but like any younger, specifically younger males, because I feel like they have a lot of pressure on them and they
Mm-hmm.
don't give themselves a chance to stay with anything. They like switch. I see a lot of younger people, and it's okay to switch, but if you're switching because you're like, I can't do this, or I want to do something else, and I think that's
Right.
very different.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And I'm hearing like you're highlighting a lot the importance of like self-awareness.
Yeah, make
Yeah.
decisions based on what you want. I'm big on that, so
Yeah.
that you can feel good. Because when stuff is not going well with whatever you're doing, you can still sleep at the end of the night because you're walking in your purpose
Yeah.
and you're doing what you feel like you're called to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
think with young males, all that pressure on them to be great, to have a good job, to take care of family,
Mm-hmm.
and if they haven't developed some core skills at a young age, when your boss comes and says, "Hey, I want you to do this," you're like, "Man, I'm out of here." So
Mm-hmm.
now you lost your job because you couldn't handle sweeping the floor one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I've seen that happen with just colleagues in general. They say like, "Well, I can't. I'm not doing this," and
Yeah.
if you're not running the show,
Yeah.
you're gonna get fired.
Yeah. Yeah, and there that theme is coming up again of like of being married to your standard, or being married to the promise or to the purpose of why you're doing whatever you're doing, so that when these unwanted experiences come up, you just don't go with the emotion of the moment and quit or give up, because you understand what the bigger picture is.
Yeah, I got a quick story. I was working at a temp agency. We were
Mm-hmm.
scanning books for Google, and we had ran out of books, but something happened. So the bosses told us to just clean our workstation. Just kind of keep yourself busy. They didn't send us home. We were
Yeah.
still gonna get paid. And my neighbor, she was like, "That's not in my job description." And then the head boss heard her say that. So like the next day or two, she was gone.
Ooh.
So it was easy. All you have to do is just make yourself look busy. But she's like, "I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing that," and she voiced it. Lack of
Oh.
resiliency. So she lost her gig.
Oh man. Wow.
And it was a
Yeah.
nice paying job for a college student.
Yeah. And if it's something that like is attacking our morals or ethics, like they're trying to ask us to break the law or do something
Yeah.
that, but yeah, if it's like, just tidy up your desk, just look like you're
Yeah.
doing something. They want to give you money, but they just don't want to see you scrolling on the gram. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's a good example right there. Yeah.
yeah.
So what advice would you give? Like if someone's like, okay, yeah, I hear you. This is all really good, but like, I really don't know what I want to do.
I would say start slow. If you can't figure it out on your own, definitely get a coach or have a mentor. Like have somebody that you can. I'm big on having a mentor, having
Mm-hmm.
somebody, even if you don't know them, somebody you can kind of aspire and not necessarily emulate, but look up to.
Yeah.
And I think if you start small with just daily small things, like, okay, set one goal that you're going to go for a 10-minute walk and then do that, even if your back hurting a little bit, because you have to build confidence. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
can't nobody can trust you with big promises if you can't make the little ones.
Yeah. I love that you said trust. I was on the same wavelength, because I'm like, that's even building trust with yourself. Because a
And
lot of times I see people are like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. But it's like they know, they just don't trust it, or they don't trust what they think they know yet. And what you're
right.
saying is a beautiful way, not only to build trust in relationships, like promise keeping, but building trust in your relationship with yourself. Like I said, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to follow through with it. And the more you start trusting yourself, the more you're going to start knowing like, okay, this is actually my thought, this is actually what I want, versus this is what so and so might have pressured me to do, or this is the external expectation that's been placed on me.
Right.
That's a really good exercise. Okay, thank you so
Thank you,
much
Dr. D.
for coming and speaking and sharing these nuggets and very like applicable techniques that people could walk away with and start building their trust in their intuition and knowing what their wants and their needs are. You talked about the importance of being able to deal with unwanted emotions as soon as they come up, and how to like be aware of your energy and resources and
Yeah.
balance all of those things. And thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Dr. D. This was fun, hopping on here with you. I enjoy your work. I like your show. So I'm really honored to just be a guest on here.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. I appreciate you very much. And if you all want to follow him on IG, I follow him there. He is very active, and I'll have his information scrolling here below and also in the comments. So thank you again for
Thanks, Dr.
watching
D.
this chapter, and we'll see you on the ground.
All right.